The alien girl entered heat after smelling human sweat. Her world shifted. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Jake Morrison, a human engineer, had been stationed on a distant alien planet for the past several months. His job had been simple, even if the work environment was anything but. He worked with the alien tech here, ensuring that the infrastructure ran smoothly and, when needed, helped with repairs. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and the quiet isolation suited him. But today, something had felt different. As he worked in the main control room, the sudden shift in the air had caught his attention. Zara, the alien girl who worked alongside him, had always been strikingly beautiful, but Jake had never thought much about it. She was unlike any other being he had encountered in his life. Her skin a vibrant green, her eyes glowing an eerie purple. Zara wasn't like the others in the base. She was distant, a bit cold, but always professional. Today, however, there was something strange in the way she moved. It was as if she was drawn to him, but Jake couldn't figure out why. It started innocently enough. Zara had brushed past him, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her skin. He barely noticed at first, lost in his thoughts as he reviewed the diagnostics for the base's power systems. But then, the air changed. A familiar but oddly intensified scent filled the room. It was his own scent. His sweat. It was something he had never really thought about before, but in this moment, it had become something that seemed to affect Zara profoundly. He could see her posture shift, her breath quickening as she moved away from him. He didn't think much of it until she turned to him, her face flushed in a way he had never seen before. "Jake," she said, her voice almost breathless. "What is that?" Her words were calm, but the tension in the air was palpable. Jake was confused at first. "What do you mean?" he asked, glancing at her. Zara took a step closer, her violet eyes narrowing. "That smell," she said, her voice lower now. It's making me feel things." Jake blinked, not understanding. "I'm not sure what you mean, Zara." She took a deep breath, clearly struggling to keep her composure. "Where I come from, we don't experience things the way humans do. We have cycles. And your scent, it's triggering something in me. Something I can't control." Jake's heart started to race. Zara had always been professional, distant. This wasn't the Zara he knew. This was something else entirely. Something unfamiliar, something deeply personal that he didn't understand. Zara took a step back, as if to distance herself from the situation, but the heat in the room was undeniable. "I need to go," she said, her voice wavering. "I'm sorry, Jake. I don't know what's happening to me." Jake watched as she turned and fled the room, leaving him alone with his thoughts and a growing sense of confusion. What had just happened? Why had her reaction to his scent been so strong? He had never known the alien physiology could be so affected by something so simple as a human smell. It left him with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. Things were about to change between him and Zara. The world around him had shifted, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for what was to come next. It had been hours since Zara had left in a rush, and Jake was still trying to process everything that had happened. He sat at his desk in the dimly lit control room, staring at the empty space where she had been just hours before. He replayed the moment over and over in his mind. The way her voice had faltered, the intensity in her eyes, and the way she had fled as if something inside her had shifted. He had known from the moment she reacted that something beyond their professional relationship was unfolding. Zara had always been composed, distant, but never like this. Jake leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples, the weight of confusion pressing down on him. He had worked with aliens before, but nothing had prepared him for this. The day had started like any other, filled with mundane tasks, monitoring systems, reviewing data, fixing glitches. But now, everything felt different. What was happening to Zara? He glanced over at the door, half expecting her to walk back in, but the silence remained. The thought of Zara in distress troubled him. He stood up, pacing the room, his mind racing with questions. He wasn't sure what he could do, but something told him that leaving things unaddressed would only make it worse. After a few minutes, Jake decided to go looking for her. He knew she would be hiding in her quarters. She wouldn't want anyone to see her like this, vulnerable, conflicted. The corridors of the alien base were quiet, the lights casting long shadows on the cold, metallic walls. He reached her door and hesitated before knocking gently. "Zara?" he called softly, trying to keep his voice calm and professional. There was no answer. He knocked again, this time a little louder. "Zara, it's Jake. I just want to check if you're okay." The door slid open slightly, and he saw her standing on the other side. Her expression was guarded, but there was something in her eyes, an inner turmoil that hadn't been there before. "Jake," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "I didn't think you'd come." Jake took a cautious step forward, unsure of how to approach the situation. "You're not alone in this, Zara. Whatever's going on, I'm here. You don't have to handle it by yourself." She looked at him for a long moment, her violet eyes searching his face as if trying to determine whether he was truly sincere. Finally, she stepped aside, allowing him to enter her quarters. The room was sparse, with minimal decoration, typical of the alien base. Zara moved to the small desk near the window, her movements stiff, like she was still struggling to regain control of herself. Jake took a seat at the edge of her bed, giving her space but staying close enough to let her know he wasn't going anywhere. "Zara, I don't know what you're feeling, but I want to help," he said, his voice low and gentle. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "You can't help," she whispered, shaking her head. "What I'm feeling, it's something I can't control. It's not supposed to happen with humans." Jake frowned, still not understanding. "What do you mean?" Zara hesitated, biting her lip before speaking again. "Where I come from, our biology, it's different. We have cycles, biological instincts that are triggered by certain things. And today, your scent, it triggered something I couldn't ignore." Jake felt a wave of realization hit him, but he was careful not to react too strongly. "So, what happens now?" he asked, trying to remain calm. Zara took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "I don't know. I've never experienced this with a human before. It's not supposed to happen. I don't know how to control it." Jake stood up, walking over to her. He wasn't sure what he could do, but he could tell that Zara needed comfort, not solutions. "You don't need to control anything, Zara. Whatever this is, we'll figure it out together." For a moment, she didn't say anything, just looked at him as if trying to gauge whether she could trust him. Finally, she nodded slowly, her shoulders relaxing. "Thank you," she said quietly. Jake smiled softly, relieved that she wasn't pushing him away. "I'm here, Zara. Let's take it one step at a time." He could feel the tension in the room ease slightly, but he knew they both had a long road ahead. Whatever was happening, it was clear that it would change the dynamic between them forever. It had been a few days since Zara had opened up to Jake, but the tension between them still lingered in the air. Zara had been quiet, withdrawn, but Jake noticed the subtle changes. There were moments when their eyes met, and the connection between them seemed to deepen, even without words. Zara was still struggling with the overwhelming feelings she couldn't control, but she was no longer pushing Jake away. Instead, she seemed to be trying to come to terms with what was happening to her. Jake, for his part, had been patient. He wasn't entirely sure what he could do to help her, but he wasn't going anywhere. He had always been a fixer, the kind of person who couldn't leave problems unresolved. But this was different. Zara wasn't a machine or a system that could be fixed with the right tools or data. She was a living, breathing being with a complexity he had never imagined. Today, the two of them were assigned to do routine checks around the base. It was just another part of their daily duties, but something felt different today. Zara was walking beside him, her movements more fluid, her shoulders less tense. As they approached one of the maintenance rooms, Jake noticed her taking a few deep breaths, trying to steady herself. "Zara," he said softly, his voice low, "how are you holding up?" She looked at him, and for a moment, there was hesitation in her eyes. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm trying to keep it together," she said. "But it's hard. I don't know what to do with these feelings." Jake nodded, understanding more than she realized. He had seen her struggle with it all, but she was trying to fight it, trying to make sense of something so deeply biological that she couldn't fully control. "You don't have to figure everything out all at once," Jake said gently. We'll take it one step at a time. Zara gave a small nod, looking at him with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. I've never felt anything like this before. The way my body reacts to you. It's confusing. Jake could see the conflict in her eyes, the struggle between the alien side of her nature and the way she was reacting to him. I'm not going anywhere, Zara, he said, his voice steady, reassuring. We'll figure this out together. You don't have to be alone in this. Zara took a slow breath, and for the first time in days, she seemed to relax slightly. The tension in her shoulders eased, and she met his gaze without hesitation. Thank you, Jake, she said, her voice soft but sincere. I don't know what I would do without you right now. Jake smiled, trying to keep things light, even though his own feelings were a tangled mess. You don't have to worry about that. I'm here for the long haul. They walked in silence for a few moments, the weight of the unspoken words hanging in the air. Zara, despite everything she was feeling, seemed to appreciate the calmness that Jake brought. It wasn't about fixing her, it was about being there for her. As they continued their work, Jake couldn't help but notice how their dynamic was slowly shifting. The connection between them, once rooted in professionalism, had evolved into something more complicated, more intense. Neither of them could ignore it anymore. But for now, all they could do was keep moving forward, step by step, as they navigated the delicate balance of their changing relationship. The days continued to pass, each one bringing a deeper level of complexity to Jake and Zara's growing connection. Despite the quiet moments they shared, the tension between them never truly disappeared. Zara was still struggling with the overwhelming biological impulses she had described to Jake. Yet her ability to remain composed in public was still remarkable. Jake couldn't help but notice the subtle changes, her small glances, the way her posture softened when she was near him, the slight tension in her muscles when their hands brushed accidentally. Zara was still the same professional colleague, but there was an undeniable shift. She was becoming more open, more human in her interactions with him, and it wasn't just the physical changes. There was something deeper happening, something emotional. They had been assigned to work together for the next few days on a new project, a system upgrade that required both their expertise. It was the perfect distraction for them, allowing them to focus on their tasks rather than the uncomfortable reality of their situation. As they sat side by side at the control panel, the hum of the machines and the soft clicking of their fingers against the keys filled the air. Zara was quiet, her concentration fully on the task at hand. Jake glanced at her, noticing the way her silvery hair caught the light. Her violet eyes were focused, but there was a subtle hint of something behind them, a depth of emotion that wasn't there before. He had always admired her professional demeanor, but now, he could sense the vulnerability that lay beneath the surface. Zara, Jake said softly, breaking the silence. She glanced at him, her eyes momentarily flickering with surprise. Yeah. Are you okay? Jake asked, his voice gentle. Zara hesitated, her fingers pausing for a moment on the control panel. She looked down, taking a breath before answering. I don't know, she admitted. It's like, I'm torn between two worlds. One part of me feels like I should just push this all away, act like it's nothing. But then there's the other part of me, the part that's drawn to you. Jake's heart skipped a beat at her honesty. It wasn't just the physical connection anymore. Zara was talking about something deeper, something emotional that both of them had been dancing around. You don't have to figure it out right now, Jake said, his voice steady. We can take things as they come. There's no rush. Zara looked at him, her gaze softening. I don't want to keep pretending like I have all the answers. It's just hard. I've never felt like this before. I've never been vulnerable. Jake smiled, trying to lighten the mood. Well, I don't mind the vulnerability. It makes you real, Zara. And I'm not going anywhere. She nodded slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing just a little. I appreciate that, she said quietly. I don't know what this is, Jake, but I feel like it's something important, and I don't want to run away from it. The silence between them felt different now. It was no longer awkward or filled with uncertainty. There was an understanding, an unspoken agreement that they would take this journey together, no matter how complicated or confusing it might be. As the hours passed, they worked side by side, occasionally exchanging glances and small words. Despite the overwhelming circumstances, the connection between them seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. Jake couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Would Zara continue to struggle with her emotions, or would they find a way to move past the complexity of their situation? He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't ready to walk away. Not now, and not ever. The days were becoming more unpredictable as Zara and Jake navigated the complexities of their relationship. While the work they were doing at the base had been more routine lately, the emotional undercurrents between them had not slowed down. There were moments when Zara would catch Jake's eye, and he could sense the tension beneath her calm exterior. They had grown closer, but the distance between them still felt vast. Zara's struggle to control her biology continued to weigh on her, and Jake knew she was doing her best to keep it together. But he could see it. He could see her longing to break free from the limitations her alien biology imposed on her. One evening, after a long day of work, the two of them sat together in the break room. The lights were dim, the hum of the station's systems in the background, and the air felt warmer than usual. Jake sat across from Zara, watching her as she absent-mindedly fiddled with a piece of equipment. "Zara," Jake said gently, "you don't have to keep pretending like everything's fine. I can tell you're still fighting this." She looked up at him, her violet eyes betraying the frustration she felt inside. "It's not that simple, Jake," she replied softly. "You don't understand what this feels like. It's not just about you or me. It's about everything I've been taught my whole life." Jake leaned forward slightly, his voice low and sincere. "I may not understand your biology, but I understand feeling trapped. I know what it's like to want something, but be afraid to reach for it because you don't know what will happen. But I'm here for you, and I won't judge you." Zara looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. She wasn't sure what to say. For the first time, she felt like she didn't have to hide her feelings from him. Jake wasn't just a colleague anymore. He was someone she could rely on. But her fears were still there, lurking in the back of her mind. "I don't know if I can control it," Zara whispered. "What if I hurt you?" Jake's heart ached at her words. "You won't hurt me," he said firmly. "I trust you, and I know you're struggling, but you don't have to face this alone." The silence between them hung for a moment, filled with the weight of everything unspoken. Then, slowly, Zara set the piece of equipment down and stood up, walking over to where Jake was sitting. She stopped just in front of him, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to let go of the tension that had built up inside her. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "For being here. For understanding." Jake stood as well, reaching out to gently touch her arm. "You don't have to thank me, Zara. I'm not going anywhere." There was a softness in her eyes now, a flicker of something that she hadn't allowed herself to feel before, hope. As they stood there, the air between them felt different. There was still a lot they didn't know, a lot they still needed to figure out. But for the first time, they weren't so afraid to face it. They were in this together. And that thought, more than anything, gave them both a sense of peace. Zara's biology still held power over her, and the future was uncertain. But as she looked at Jake, she realized she didn't need to have everything figured out right away. The connection between them was real, and it was enough to take things one step at a time. The following days were filled with a quiet tension as Jake and Zara continued their work on the base. While they both tried to focus on their tasks, the unspoken connection between them was growing stronger. Each time they interacted, it was as if the world around them became a little smaller, their world a little more entwined. But despite the undeniable pull they both felt, Zara still struggled with the feelings she couldn't control, and Jake couldn't help but feel the weight of her internal battle. She was trying so hard to keep everything under wraps, to maintain the professional demeanor she was so accustomed to, but Jake could see the cracks forming. One afternoon, after a particularly long shift, they were assigned to work late. The station was quieter now, the usual bustle replaced by a calm stillness as they sat side by side in the control room, monitoring the systems. Zara was silent as usual, but there was a noticeable shift in her posture. She seemed distant. Jake, who had grown accustomed to her occasional glances and small gestures, could feel the space between them widening once again. "Zara," Jake called softly, trying to break the silence. "You've been quiet. Everything okay?" She didn't immediately respond, her fingers tapping gently on the console. Jake could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes flitted over the readings on the screen without truly seeing them. "Zara?" he asked again, his voice gentle but insistent. She finally looked up, meeting his gaze. There was a vulnerability in her eyes that she hadn't allowed herself to show before. "Jake, I'm trying," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm trying so hard to keep everything together, but I can't. It's like every part of me is telling me to pull away, but I don't want to. I don't want to shut you out." Jake felt his heart tighten at her words. He stood up slowly, walking over to her side. He could feel the weight of her emotions, the internal struggle that was wearing her down. "Zara," he said, his voice steady but filled with compassion, "you don't have to keep pushing yourself. We're in this together, remember? You don't have to hide from me." She took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling as if she was gathering the strength to say something important. "I don't know what this is, Jake," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know how to handle these feelings. I've never been like this before. My biology, my instincts, everything's different now. I don't know if I can control it. I don't know if I can control myself." Jake knelt down beside her, gently placing his hand on hers. "You don't have to control anything, Zara. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm not asking you to have all the answers. I'm just asking you to trust me, to let me be here with you." Zara's eyes filled with emotion as she looked at him. She had never expected to find someone who could make her feel safe in this strange, foreign world she was in. "I trust you, Jake," she whispered, the words soft but sincere. "But it's hard." Jake smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "I know, and it's okay. We'll take it one step at a time." They sat there in the quiet of the control room, their hands still resting together, the weight of their unspoken feelings filling the space between them. The station was silent, but for the first time in days, Zara didn't feel alone. There was a sense of peace in knowing that Jake was there, that he wasn't going to leave her to struggle with everything on her own. They didn't need to have all the answers right away. They didn't need to rush into anything. For now, they would simply be there for each other, taking it one step at a time. And that was enough. It had been a week since Zara had opened up to Jake, and though things weren't perfect, they were starting to find a rhythm together. There were still moments when the tension between them would rise, when Zara would retreat into herself. But Jake was always there, steady and patient. The understanding between them had deepened, and while Zara still struggled with the biological instincts she couldn't fully control, she no longer felt isolated in her experience. Jake's presence had become a comfort, a grounding force that she hadn't expected. Their work together continued, the days blending into one another as they navigated the complexities of life on the alien base. Jake found himself looking forward to their interactions, even the small moments when they would exchange a glance or share a quiet conversation. Zara had begun to trust him more, even allowing herself to lean on him when the weight of her situation felt too much to bear. But the underlying challenge of her biology remained. One evening, after a long day of testing equipment, Jake and Zara found themselves alone in the lab. The air was thick with the hum of machinery, the soft whirring of cooling systems the only sound in the otherwise quiet room. Zara was focused on her work, her face illuminated by the glow of the screens, but Jake could sense the unease beneath her calm exterior. "Zara," Jake said gently, his voice soft but deliberate. She looked up, her violet eyes meeting his. "Jake," she responded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Zara hesitated, her fingers stilling on the control panel. She looked at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. "I feel it again," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The pull, the longing." Jake's heart clenched at her words, but he kept his tone calm. "Zara, you don't have to fight it alone. We can work through this together. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself." She closed her eyes briefly, taking a deep breath. "I don't want to hurt you," she murmured, her voice laced with uncertainty. "I can feel it building inside me, and I don't know how to control it." Jake took a step closer to her, his gaze steady and unwavering. "You're not going to hurt me, Zara," he said firmly. "You don't need to control anything. Just be yourself. That's all I'm asking." Zara looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. She had never felt so vulnerable, so exposed. Yet in Jake's presence, she also felt a sense of safety she had never known before. "I don't know if I can do this," she said softly. "But I want to try. I don't want to shut you out anymore." Jake smiled, his hand reaching out to gently touch hers. "You don't have to do it alone. You never have to shut me out." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of their unspoken emotions filled the space between them. Zara could feel the tension inside her slowly begin to fade, replaced by something else, something warm, something comforting. She wasn't sure what the future held, or how they would navigate the challenges ahead, but in that moment, she realized she didn't have to face it alone. Jake was there, and that was enough. As the night wore on, they worked together in silence, the quiet hum of the lab the only sound filling the space. But there was a new understanding between them now, a bond that was growing stronger with each passing day. Zara wasn't sure where this journey would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had someone she could rely on. And that, in itself, was a powerful feeling. The days continued to pass, and while Zara and Jake's relationship was growing, the uncertainty about their future was never far from their minds. Zara was still dealing with the pull of her alien biology, her instincts fighting against the human emotions she was beginning to feel. The strain of this inner conflict weighed on her, but she was no longer shutting herself off from Jake. Instead, they were navigating this uncharted territory together, step by step. One afternoon, as they worked side by side in the lab, Zara paused, her fingers hovering over the console. Jake glanced over at her, sensing the shift in her demeanor. "Is everything all right?" he asked, his voice gentle. Zara didn't respond immediately, her mind racing. She had been trying so hard to keep it together, to remain professional, but it was getting harder to deny what was growing between them. She had spent so much of her life focused on duty, on the mission, but now, her emotions felt so overwhelming. "Jake," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need to tell you something." Jake's heart skipped a beat at the seriousness in her tone. He turned toward her, giving her his full attention. "You can tell me anything, Zara." She took a deep breath, gathering the courage to open up. "I don't know how to explain this, but the feelings I'm having, I don't know if they're just a result of my biology, or if they're real. I've never felt this way before, and it scares me." Jake stepped closer to her, his gaze soft and reassuring. "Zara, I'm not asking you to have everything figured out. I'm not asking for you to have all the answers right now. All I know is that I care about you. And that's real. Whatever this is, whatever you're feeling, we'll figure it out together." Zara's breath hitched, and for a moment, she felt a tear threaten to fall. She had spent so much time suppressing her emotions, trying to control every aspect of herself. But now, with Jake's words, it felt like the walls she had built around her were starting to crumble. "I'm scared, Jake," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I don't know what to do with this, with you." Jake gently placed a hand on her shoulder, offering her comfort. "You don't have to know everything right now, but what I do know is that you're not alone in this. I'm right here, Zara." She looked up at him, her violet eyes filled with a mixture of emotions, fear, longing, and something else she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge before, hope. Zara reached out, her hand trembling as it brushed against his. She had always been so careful, so controlled, but now, with Jake, it felt different. It felt like she could finally let go. "I don't want to hurt you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jake smiled softly, his thumb brushing across her hand. "You're not going to hurt me. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. I'm not going anywhere." Zara's heart raced at his words, but in that moment, she knew she wasn't alone. They didn't have all the answers, and their path forward was uncertain, but there was one thing she knew for sure. They were in this together. The lab around them felt quieter now, the hum of the machines providing a calming backdrop to the shared silence between them. They didn't need to say anything else. The connection between them was undeniable, and as they stood there, side by side, it was clear that whatever came next, they would face it together. They were ready to take the next step, whatever that might be. The weeks continued to pass, and the quiet bond between Zara and Jake deepened with each day. The base had returned to its usual rhythm, but for them, everything had changed. The shared moments, quiet glances, whispered words, and simple gestures were now filled with an unspoken understanding. Zara had stopped retreating into herself, and Jake's steady presence had become her anchor. Yet, despite the growing connection between them, Zara still found herself struggling with her instincts. It wasn't easy to suppress the feelings that surged within her, but with Jake's patience, she felt less isolated. One evening, as they finished up their work and prepared to leave the lab, Jake noticed that Zara seemed distant again. Her usual calm was replaced by a certain restlessness. He hesitated before speaking, knowing the weight of their unspoken emotions. "Zara?" he asked gently, his voice soft in the quiet room. She looked at him, her violet eyes heavy with thought. "Yeah," she replied, her voice betraying the uncertainty she was feeling. Jake approached her slowly, trying to gauge what was going on inside her. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his tone filled with concern. Zara took a deep breath, her eyes avoiding his for a moment before meeting his gaze. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," she admitted quietly. "These feelings, they're not just about me. It's like my biology is fighting against my emotions. I don't know how to manage it anymore." Jake's heart ached for her. He could see how torn she was, caught between the pull of her instincts and the growing feelings she had for him. "Zara," he said softly, "you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to do this alone." She met his gaze, her expression vulnerable. "I don't want to push you away," she whispered. "I don't want to hurt you, but I can feel myself pulling back." Jake reached out, placing a hand gently on hers. "Zara," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "You don't have to control everything. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes searched his face, looking for any hint of hesitation, but she found none. She felt his sincerity, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe it. She wasn't alone. "I'm so scared," she admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "I don't know what's happening to me." Jake squeezed her hand, his touch warm and grounding. "It's okay to be scared," he said softly. "I'm here, no matter what. We'll take it one step at a time, together." Zara's breath hitched, and she finally allowed herself to relax, just a little. The tension in her body began to ease, the weight of her fears lighter for the first time. "Thank you, Jake," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for not giving up on me." He smiled gently, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "I'm not going anywhere. And neither are you. We'll figure this out, together." The quiet of the lab settled around them, the hum of the machines a soft background to the unspoken connection between them. Zara didn't have all the answers, and neither did Jake, but they knew one thing for sure. They were in this together. Whatever came next, they would face it side by side. And that was enough. They stood there for a long moment, the silence comfortable, filled with everything they didn't need to say. They were ready for the future, whatever it might hold, together.